Today I'm going to talk about why you can't resist stuff like this. The food companies, especially junk food companies, have a big problem. There's no profit in whole food. There's no profit in selling meat and eggs and even milk and cheese, especially if you're doing grass-fed and you're doing high-quality eggs. There's no profit in that. The margins are so slim. A farmer makes like maybe 1 or 2% if they're lucky. What did they have to do to solve it? They had to give you something that gave you a much greater pleasure sensation than real food. So that's called hyperpalatability. So appealing that you can't resist it. So number one, they had to make food irresistible. Number two, they have to make sure that you're never fully satisfied. Okay? Because if you're satisfied, then you'll just eat 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? But with these and with all this other food, you cannot just have a few. This is the anatomy of an addiction. Now, how do they do this? Well, they combine a couple things. First of all, they have to create what's called the bliss point. What's the bliss point? It's a special combination of ingredients. Flavor scientists have spent a long time to figure out what perfect combinations of sugar, starch, seed oils, salt, and flavoring to hit this maximum pleasure, especially after you consume all the sugar and starch and it affects your blood sugar. Now we're dealing with a body addiction because the artificial flavor chemicals are very, very different than natural flavor chemicals. In other words, these artificial flavors create way more intensity, like 300 times more intensity than natural flavors. So the intensity of these flavors bombard the brain with so much stimulation. And if you do this multiple times, you're going to have memory of these foods. And so you're going to be driving down the street and you're going to see a Thai restaurant and you're going to drive in there because your brain remembers this pleasure. And if you're going through stress or you're tired, that's going to kind of give you some relief. When in fact, you're actually going to be causing more stress to your physical body and your brain, because when you do this over and over and over, you start developing dopamine resistance because the junk food is virtually empty of nutrition. There's like nothing left. There's no phytonutrients. There's no vitamins. There's no minerals. Now they will spray a couple synthetic vitamins to give you the sensation that you're getting something. And they'll probably put on there, oh yeah, the orange juice has vitamin C, when it's just, you just put a little ascorbic acid on there. But in reality, there's like no nutrition. And there's one more thing about all this food that is missing, and that is protein. They don't have any protein. A person will continue to eat carbohydrates and other things until their protein requirement is satisfied. These foods are not actually foods because the definition of food is to give you energy, sustain life. Can the ingredients in these foods actually do that? I don't think they can. I want to just share something with you. By the time you see this video, we should be done with this app. And I don't know if you could see it. It just kind of whites out too much, but I have this app. It's a free app. I'm just going to show you what it does. You just press scan. Okay. And you put it up to the barcode. Bingo. It actually measures how much sugar, starch, and seed oil without doing anything else. So you can really identify those 3 nasty ingredients in most of this junk food at a quick press of a button. And so the intention of this app is to use it in your refrigerator and your pantry and your family's refrigerator and their pantry to really be aware of what you've been eating. We'll put a link down below so you can download it, but it's a free app. It's pretty cool. So let's talk about some of the most fake foods in the world. Okay, I'm going to go through these. Number 1, barbecue potato chips. When you actually deep fry starches, you get this chemical, acrylamide. Not good. And then they also add chemicals with like monosodium glutamate. It creates a lot of fluid retention because it's a lot of hidden sodium. And so why do they put it on foods? Because it increases the savory sensation. It makes the food taste better than it really is. Next one is all the cheese pops, like the cheese corn. Now you might think, oh yeah, they're just like dehydrating some cheese and then sprinkling it on popcorn. And no, they're not. Very rarely do they ever use real cheese. Instead, they use cheese flavoring. And there's a lot of things in this pop cheese corn in the flavoring and also the ingredients in the flavoring. You might have heard about maltodextrin, but if we compare maltodextrin, which is a starch, to a sugar, maltodextrin is not classified as a sugar. If you keep these ingredients under 0.5 grams, a half of a gram, that's 50 milligrams, you can list them as 0. Yeah, that's right. So when you see sugar-free, or even consume a lot of this junk food, you're getting a lot of hidden maltodextrin, trans fats, and definitely sugar. And also, maltodextrin is classified as a complex carbohydrate. We think complex carbohydrates are healthy. Not all of them. All right, the next one is plant-based meats, okay? These are what's called clean meats, which they're anything but clean. Plant-based meats, you're using all sorts of similar chemicals and hidden junk food and sugars, just like any of the ultra-processed foods that you would see at the grocery store. And one big thing that they'll do is they'll use a very inexpensive protein, soy protein isolate. This is a very highly industrial processed, ultra-processed protein that has virtually no flavor. But there's a lot of marketing to get you to eat plant-based everything. But again, you're not going to see a push to eat actual plants because there's not much profit in actual green plants that are grown in soil. I want to touch on lab-based meats. To my knowledge, they're not out yet. They're coming out, and it's not going to be a vegan product because they're going to have to use cells from an unborn cow's fetus. And then they're going to extract that and put it in a huge container and try to get it to reproduce. And apparently these cells are immortal. Okay. They can live on forever. Very similar to cancer. But presently, it's very expensive. They have not figured out a way to reduce the cost. What they're doing now to create this demand is to try to wipe out or give actual beef a black eye. Thus, the attack against red meat and cows and these farmers. But I think the next one, fast food restaurants, is what I loved. I'd pull up in one of those restaurants and I would notice that there's this huge line down the street. There is a ton of MSG and there's a lot of flavor chemicals. And they even put things in the pickles, right, to keep them in a certain color and a certain taste, but it's all artificially good. Then we get to maple syrup. Real maple syrup is very expensive to extract from a tree. It takes a lot of work. It's much cheaper to make artificial maple syrup, and that's what they do. They use either high fructose corn syrup or dextrose or glucose syrup with flavorings. I want to mention olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. A good percentage of the olive oil in United States, especially the extra virgin olive oil, is diluted with other cheap oils and maybe with a little bit of olive oil in there. Next one is imitation crab. At one point, I did not think there was a difference between real crab and imitation crab. I would buy the imitation crab at the grocery store because it was cheaper. So what they do is they'll take codfish, right? And then they'll also add a starch and flavoring. So you're getting this artificially flavored crab. It's not even close to crab. Then we get cheese products. There's no cheese in here. We won't even call it food. It's like a product of some sort. This next thing is not a food, but it's just an ingredient, artificial sweeteners. I want to mention this because they're artificial. They affect the microbiome. They affect the mood. They have this sweetness, but without the calories, right? Well, okay, so it doesn't have calories. So does that make it less damaging on our blood sugars? The answer is no, because indirectly, it can affect your blood sugar. It can create insulin resistance. And if you had a choice between artificial sweeteners and sugar, I would just eat the sugar. I want to mention honey. Real honey is an amazing, miraculous product that has all these different phytonutrients and chemicals. But then you have fake honey, which is made from high fructose corn syrup or glucose syrup with flavoring. And then lastly, I want to mention the plant-based milk. Okay. First of all, soy milk, oat milk. Do you realize that there's not much soy or oat in this milk? It's just like maybe 2% almond or soy, and then the rest water and carrageenan, which has been known to affect your gut, and then flavorings. And if you have an addiction, a craving for some of this junk food, you should probably watch this video right here